Well, thank you for having me. I think it's just a really great opportunity. Very encouraged when we have groups like my home group reaching out to cities to learn more about what they're up to and kind of get facts and information straight from the source. So when Kelly reached out, we said absolutely, we will definitely be here. My name is Jeff Stapleton. I'm with the City of Phoenix Community Economic Development Department, and I'm program manager over transitory development. So my focus is basically on these shaded areas within a half a mile of light rail. So we've got downtown, and then kind of the existing light rail that heads out to Tempe. We have future corridors with South Central, the service opening next year. We have the Capitol extension, which is kind of in the near term, probably in the next 5 to 6 years. And then in the 30s, I-10 West, heading out to Desert Sky Mall. So what you see in each of these boxes is effectively a kind of more neighborhood-specific plan for how we allow for land use development within those areas. And really, the focus is on how do we create transit-oriented development. And these boxes is really for 517 square miles of Phoenix. This adds up to about maybe 30 square miles. So this really is just kind of a percentage, a slice of the city where we're able to bring transit, and we want to be able to bring complementary land uses into the area to support transit. Outside of these areas, you really have more like traditional zoning, kind of zoning by use. You have your zoning, and then you have the kind of required parking or setbacks that come along with the zoning. Inside these areas, it's a little bit different because the emphasis is less about the use, and it's more about how you're building the building itself. Are you able to bring the building closer to the street and tuck the parking in the rear, behind the back, or be able to internalize it into a parking structure? It's more about having an urban form that kind of encourages and supports an environment where people want to walk or bike more, etc. In downtown, that zoning ordinance was implemented in 2008, and it is throughout this downtown area. Every property has that kind of urban zoning on its property. Of course, if you own a property and you like your property and want to continue using it in whatever way it was, prior to its zoning, you're going to decide at your own point on what you want to do with your property. But of course, as you've been down, in downtown recently, many properties have taken advantage of the form-based zoning ordinance. These other areas, 19 North, Solano, Uptown, Midtown, Gateway, Eastlake, they all have a form-based urban zoning ordinance too. The difference is that it's opt-in. We did not do kind of an overlay on the entire area. And part of that is we wanted support for our community plans in these areas. And so if you do look through them, really what we've done is kind of the key areas that are really within a quarter mile of the stop. That's where we're kind of focusing our future attention on height and density. And then the owners of the detached single family homes are kind of left, alone. And really they get the benefit of being able to live near kind of all the amenities for the mixed use development nearby. So I just wanted to kind of provide that kind of preface on the background on TOD and more specifically where it applies in the city. Couple stats on our TOD areas and the development activity that's occurred in them. So from 2005 to the present, and 2005 is when the original line started construction, so 19 years, 304 projects, which is pretty impressive considering that these areas were all built out primarily before. There were a lot of vacant lots in downtown that was helpful, but 304 projects over that time span. It's $11 billion in project value when you add up all the projects that were constructed. It's about 2.5 to 1 on the private to public. Most of that public is the convention center, the Sheraton Hotel, the universities investing in ASU, in the ASU downtown campus, the Phoenix Biomedical Corps. And there you see some stats there on the kind of attributes of the different uses that have been created in those areas, kind of highlighting the 24,000 residential units. So really bringing bringing vitality back to the city. That was kind of where this really came from, kind of the urban decay or neglect of downtown from the 1970s and 80s, and really reversing that trend. Your eyes don't deceive you if you've been downtown and see all the development activity. This is just kind of putting some stats behind it on the trend of the capital investment. So this is kind of how that $11 billion breaks out year over year. This one was just skewed by the convention center and Sheraton opening in 1 year, but you do see that it's been a build up over time. We were a little bit set back in that the light rail system didn't open at a very opportune time. It opened right around, with the Great Recession. There were some other major metros who were able to get their system open sooner in the 2000s, and then were able to enjoy more of a development boom in the 2000s that we kind of missed out on. So we're really kind of catching up here in this post-2016 time frame. And then just to kind of look at it through a different window, you're talking about the 300 plus projects. Your eyes don't deceive you. It's pretty much post 2016, and then the residential units. We even had 1 year where we had 0, which was pretty sad. But I know there was that was a tough time for everyone, and you can see that we've been able to pick up that activity since 2016. What tools do we utilize in these TOD areas? Much of the development is just privately led without the city's involvement. It's really using the planning tools, providing for the supportive land use code that you can rezone to or adopt in that area. There are certain properties where we do get involved using city tools. One that you might have heard about is government property lease excise tax. It's basically like a substitute property tax that's lower than the ad valorem property tax. And we are only able to use that in very specific areas, downtown being one of them. We can use it up in the Metro Center area too, which we'll talk about in a moment. We can use community facilities districts where the developer can petition us to create a district. There's then debt issued on the district for infrastructure. And then it's backed up by property tax assessments on the properties. We can reimburse for public infrastructure. So a developer builds a large mixed-use development and is building public assets that they'll dedicate to the city. We can use future sales tax revenue generated by the development and then kind of purchase the public assets built by the developer. We do have some land holdings that we've been able to contribute. We can write down the cost of land into a development as well, as long as we're getting an adequate public benefit or return. We also have sister organizations like the Phoenix IDA that provide lower cost financing as well to private developers too. So you'll kind of hear some of the different tools that we use in each of these sites. Some of the key TOD projects that the city's been involved in. I'm sure you're all very familiar with both of these. They both are right next to each other downtown with Cityscape and Block 23. Some of the tools I mentioned, whether it's city land or buying public infrastructure, those are all tools that we used in both of these developments that were developed by Redevelopment, who's doing the PD development. We have long-term development agreements at both of these sites. The Block 23 one was very critical with Fry's. Downtown had not had a grocery store since the late 1970s. How can you really sell living in downtown without a grocery store? That had been very tough during the teens to do that, and Fry's was a big achievement for us being part of the Block 23 development. Not all the ones we're involved in are large-scale developments. Some of them are a little bit kind of more mid-rise in scale. We owned property at 5th Avenue in Fillmore, where we did a development agreement with Trammell Crow to build a multifamily development with ground floor retail that just opened 2 years ago. And then we've done, like I mentioned, we've done a lot of work with the universities. We either owned land or we did a development agreement to bring in the university, or brought in bond financing into some of these projects that they've done. Fusion on First has residential with classroom space downtown and opened 3 years ago. The biggest TOD project that the city is currently working on is Central Station. This is at Central and Van Buren. This had been a bus terminal since about the late 1990s. And really, as the city got more serious about its TOD planning in the 2000s, they looked at Central Station. They said, you know, people are going to use transit if it's very convenient for them. They really need to be like right next to it so that it's convenient for them. We'll look at the bus terminal. What's the population of this site in this city center? 0. So, you know, how can we use our ownership of the land to turn that around? And so what we did was we issued an RFP in 2018 to take in developer proposals. The winner was the Metastar Corporation out of Houston. They formed a joint venture with GMH Communities out of Philadelphia. So what's great is that the downtown redevelopment on a lot of these sites, we've been able to bring in developers who normally have not worked in Phoenix. So we can kind of tap in to other successful projects and that kind of experience base they have elsewhere in the country. Some of the attributes on Central Station. So here's the West Tower. This will have kind of rent by the bedroom spaces that are kind of targeted to the student audience that is by ASU downtown. We are rebuilding the bus terminal into the ground floor of the development. So obviously we're looking north here, and then back behind the buildings here is the Polk Street, where a lot of the bus berths will be relocated. We also have a public transit operations office with security as well on site. And then we have the East Tower, which will have 2 levels of office, the ground floor retail, and then apartments above. And one of the great things about this site is when you're able to get into, you know, it'll open next year. There's a Paseo that goes right from light rail platform to light rail platform. You'll be able to walk right through the development, both east-west and north-south. The design team is Bolte Studio, and they did a phenomenal job really figuring out how to deliver all of these uses on just such a tight site. And we are doing this through like I mentioned, we are, since we are going to own the public transit improvements, we did a 99-year ground lease with the developer. So a lot of the TOD effort, you know, Central Phoenix, downtown, Midtown, it's really where a lot of that activity's been focused. We want to bring some of that love to some of these other TOD districts as well. Actually, sorry, so here's some more renderings here on Central Station. Looking on Central, with the ground floor retail here next to the light rail platform. And then an overview of the development there with the West Tower, the East Tower. We actually just topped out the East Tower about 3 weeks ago. And it should open in, we're thinking about April is when the development will open. Yes.
What is TOD?
I'm sorry?
TOD.
TOD, Transit Oriented Development.
Oh.
Sorry if I over acronym, let me know, and then I'll unpack it. Transit Oriented Development.
Okay.
So we're talking about spread the love. Bringing more of the, a lot of that data showing the capital investment, $11 billion, probably about 85% of it is in those 2 districts. It's in downtown and midtown. What assets do we have elsewhere on our system where we can encourage more redevelopment that's supportive of the system? It's at our mall sites. These are large land holdings. Where we can have a lot of runway to do mixed-use development. We're talking sites that have, 40, 80 acres. and you just don't get that kind of opportunity anywhere else. We have 4 malls within our TOD corridors. They're all kind of in different stages of their life. We have 2 Rest in Peace, and one kind of in a weird kind of transition mode, and then Desert Sky Mall, which I'll talk about later. I do feel pretty good about myself in that I am younger than all these malls, just barely. So mall redevelopment, why doesn't it happen so quickly? Why is it so hard? So here's a Metro Center, North Pier pointing to the right, and you're a tenant in the mall, right? And so you just clear out the tenants and you just redevelop the mall. Like it's we just talk to the mall owner. Not so easy. It's fragmented ownership, and so typically you have the mall owner is really just owns the mall core and some of the parking, and then the department stores own their own box and parking in front of it. And so we like to work with the master developer who has a sound vision for how they can redevelop the area. And really, they get the best economy of scale too. And so it gets very challenging when you have up to 6 parties who need to agree on something. And then even worse, like you think about, you go to the mall, like I'm actually going to go to this store, but I'm going to park here and walk through Dillard's, and maybe I'll buy something or not. I don't know. I'm going to walk in the mall and walk back. And so what they all want is they want a parking right on everyone else's property. And so this gives kind of a veto power to one owner of the box to say, no, you can't build over here because they could park here and come to my store. So no. So really what you need a lot of patience. You need to work with the owners and really provide the incentive for the master developer to come in and start to assemble as much of the property as possible. And so kind of talk about how that played out at some of these sites. When we look at the big picture on mall redevelopment, what are we really looking at? What's what works? Creating more density, that is what works. You have a mall location where your kind of 2-dimensional plane that surrounds it is built out. It has detached single-family homes. And how do you create more customers if you're built out? You need to get on that site and you need to bring residential to it. You need to create more customers. That is what is successful for mall redevelopment. I talked about some of our land use plans, so we have that vision up front. Whether the owners of the mall don't agree with themselves, we're going to come in with a plan that's going to allow for more height and density and mixed use that a future developer can take advantage of. So if they're going to ask to rezone the property, we have off the shelf a community approved plan that's going to be able to provide the tools necessary for a successful redevelopment. Typically, when we're talking about more intensive land use that just kind of pairs with high capacity transit, those two things just go together. And then lastly, one of the challenges of the mall, talk about the shared parking easements and the parking rights. What we want to look for is how do we extinguish those easements? How do we stack up the parking rights and perhaps get them into a parking garage? That then gets us that parking field and more of the acreage on site to redevelop it. And when we talk to the developer or the owners of the individual parcels, we really remind them, like, this is all good for you in the end. If we are able to achieve all these things, this adds value to the real estate. And it's really to try and give that encouragement to work with a master developer who can redevelop the site.
Can you go backwards 2 slides backwards?
Sure.
To the back one more.
So are you, on this map, are you subjecting the people who you say don't have the option to opt in to this zone overlay? Are they then required, if they were to do a redevelopment, to meet those density and height requirements? Or
No.
do they have the option to do that?
So, let's say you own a detached single-family home in like uptown, and you have like an R1 zoning district, it's not really envisioned that that area would, like a neighborhood would completely transition to some kind of multifamily development. And so it's not even called out in the plan for a lot of those neighborhoods to even be recommended for a new zoning district. And so if they did want to tear down or rebuild, or whether they acquire a property next to them, they have the right to just retain their R1 zoning. They already have it anyways, even if we don't
Right.
do any of these plans. So
But they could go up, they could surpass the R1 zoning density.
no, because it's not recommended in the plan. So it depends on the area you're in. For the most part, the detached single-family homes, they don't have a recommended zoning district. It's the kind of commercial areas that are immediately on the light rail that have some type of recommended zoning district that allows for more height density.
Okay.
So they can come in and say, we want to zone to something that allow for 60 feet in height and like 200 dwelling units per acre, and then we would, open up the plan and be like, yeah, that's what we've intended, and you go for your rezoning, and then staff would say, this rezoning meets the plan and is recommended, and then it's up to the planning commission to vote on it.
So owning property in this area doesn't give you any type of leniency to your zoning, any ability to build a higher density if it was residential?
Generally, that's correct.
Okay.
And when we're going through and doing these plans, it's it's a touchy subject. It's do people want in their single family neighborhood their neighbor to be able to build a a multifamily building? No, not so much. So we have to balance out where we have the opportunity to be able to build up and make it compatible with the people who live kind of on the periphery of that area, who want to continue living in their neighborhood. There's some great neighborhoods that are along these corridors.
I'm missing the PV mode here on the mode redevelopment.
You can't see it, but it's there. We haven't forgotten. There's a reason why it's not visible on here, but we'll get to it.
Okay.
So Park Central, talk about the strategy. What do? We worked with the developer to upzone to walkable urban code. They rezoned the site, we brought light rail to it. We had an owner here, an owner here, a different owner here. We had different owners of the out parcels. We put together some of those tools that I talk about, like the community facilities district, reimbursement for public improvement and access, and we brought in a master developer to get to work on assembling the site. And so we worked with the partnership of Hulualoa companies and the Plaza companies, who formed a kind of joint development firm or joint development venture. Plaza did Sky Song at the former Los Arcos Mall site. So we felt they were a great partner to work with on this location. And they were able basically to get it down to them in Dignity. They were kind of the remaining two. And we felt at that point, if Dignity could buy in, we were going to be able to have a successful development with Hulualoa and Plaza. Really what we had to do was we had to get some of the Dignity parking rights, and we had to get some of the surrounding user parking rights consolidated into this parking garage. This is Central with the rail, and then Catalina at the south end of the site. So we formed the Community Facilities District, which allowed for funds to be raised to construct the parking garage that's there at the south end of the site. And then once we start stacking up those parking rights in the garage, then we can get to work. Apartments, Creighton, retail, hotel under construction. We wanted to focus the first wave here right next to light rail, and a lot of those have been completed, with the hotel expected to open by the end of the year. And we're not done. We will work with them until we get every piece of this surface parking redeveloped. That's what's envisioned in the plan, and we have great support from the developer to do just that. We do have a future proposal here along 3rd Avenue for more multifamily on the west end of the site. They also, Hululo and Plaza, they renovated much of the existing mall structure into office, and then had a retail here on this kind of paseo they created, kind of on this First Avenue alignment. And then there's Creighton, if you haven't been down there recently, the apartments there on the left, and then a rendering of the Hilton Home 2 Suites that's under construction. That's topped out now. They probably have about six months or so to go to get to their opening. Metro Center. So talk about the fragmented ownership. We worked with the previous owner to bring in a PUD. It's kind of a special zoning district. A PUD, really, what it does depends on site to site. It's very site specific, but I will say for this PUD, really borrowed heavily from kind of that walkable urban code to make sure that what is built under the PUD, as best as possible, kind of meets that form-based zoning ordinance to encourage density and height as well. We had a very long-term plan to bring light rail to this location, which we did make good on at the beginning of the year. And we worked with Concord to be able to assemble the sites. So we brought in some of those tools I talked about, and they got to work, and that's how much they put together so far. They do have enough to get started with their development. I know there's a question on, when is that going to get started? They are going to get started in demolition this year, and this is a big site. It's a lot to chew. It is going to take. This is definitely a kind of 5+ year project that's delivered in multiple phases. They are working still on getting this piece with Sears and working out kind of a partnership on being able to demolish the site. At least their part as well. Kind of makes no sense for them to build their new development and then Sears just to be there. So,
what's that little rectangle there?
That is a great question. So the previous owner, Carlisle, they tried to redevelop the mall and they just could not get enough cooperation from the other properties. They had a very negative relationship with Dillard's, so they really could not get forward. Dillard's, in fact, was not part of the PUD. We did later add them when Concord came into the picture, but what they started doing was they just started selling off pieces, and so they were making it harder to get the mall redeveloped, and so they sold off Walmart. They own that, and so it's like, well, now we have, we're at 6 owners. We want fewer. We don't need more, and they're kind of making it worse by spinning off more of the properties. So that is a self-storage. So the old JCPenney is a self-storage, which not helpful. Now, that's a business. We've talked to them. They support the redevelopment. We talked about in that last slide our strategies add more value to the real estate. They agree with that. But yeah, that's what that box is. You'll see on the next slide kind of the plan is for how they're going to accommodate that. Walmart remains. Walmart's owned on its own. Will always be part of the site. The Sears site can be tucked into the redevelopment in the future. We're hoping that that's something that can be agreed to here relatively soon. So this is a rendering of the future Metro Center redevelopment and the master plan for it. Here you have the light rail coming in. Really the idea is that the periphery has multifamily, and then the center has kind of that village core, that kind of main street, shopping street with a public plaza at the center. They did retool the design a little bit. Originally they had a main shopping street kind of diagonal. We thought it was a very wise decision that they've now decided that Sherrill Drive will just come all the way through the site. We think that that's a good idea long term. One thing I'll note with a lot of the mall sites, and really a lot of the urban redevelopment too, we got in a bad habit in the 20th century of doing what we call a super block, where the private owner would amass 10 acres or more of an entire block. and then there was no guaranteed public access through the site. And so when you're trying to do urban development, you want that block more permeable. You want to be able to approach and walk and bike through it at a more smaller level. And super block development doesn't really provide for that. And so we're very happy that they are bringing Cheryl and 28th Drive right in there. We'll be able to guarantee public access on those thoroughfares as well. And then you can kind of see in the design too, even outside of those, there's other kind of access ways that are, permeated through the development. And there's the self-storage, and you can see what they're doing. They're just wrapping it with uses we like. So, and
hiding it?
yeah, they're basically hiding it. So, and they've been a great partner. They've been really good to work with, and they have the right to operate their business. And Concord's clever enough to figure out how to put the active use around the self-storage, which self-storage and dense urban development don't really go together. But they've figured out a way in the long term how they're going to be able to make it work.
Do you have a way to use like eminent domain or anything like that, or?
It's a great question. So here's the thing with eminent domain. We don't really want to use it. Eminent domain is really a tool for local government when you're building a public facility that has an unquestioned public use. So think of like a police substation, freeways. If you start to take that eminent domain towards a private real estate activity, that's when we get hit by the courts. And in fact, a lot of that is illegal. There was a Supreme Court case back in 2005 called Kelo versus New London in Connecticut, and they did a eminent domain of a business that it was kind of an older, lower revenue business, and it was kind of in the way of a big master plan that a developer wanted to do, and so they did eminent domain. And sure, the new development had better tax revenue generation, may have been supported by the community, but that was struck down. So we have to be careful in how we use eminent domain, and that's why we're talking about we provide the incentive and then let the developer go do the assemblage. That keeps our hands out of the property acquisition, and then we're not doing any eminent domain. We're encouraging private to private transactions. What are we getting over the kind of long-term future here at Metro Center? Again, more residential, right? So that's what makes the space work. So we're getting up to about 2,800 units overall. We're hoping that there are going to be some ownership opportunities here at the site too. That's something we get asked about again and again. We certainly do want to provide for them. This commercial space, this is probably about split halfway between retail and the hotel. The United States, as a first world country, we are kind of overstored from a square footage perspective, and so the mall was a 1 million square feet of retail space. And so we're kind of getting this right sizing it down to about 150,000 square feet of retail space.
Wow.
But being able to better support it with more residential and mixed use surrounding it.
There's two arrows between the restaurants and then the self-storage that come down and split.
Right here?
Yeah, what does that say above that?
This is, I'm sorry if that was cut off, but these are parking structures.
Oh, okay.
So you put the parking in the middle. Another term for it is called a Texas donut. You put the parking structure in the middle, and then you wrap the uses around it. And so then you're walking on the street, and you're not really seeing the parking structure, hearing the idling, vehicle movements. You have this great streetscape with the landscaping and storefronts and active uses. So that's kind of the design tactic they're deploying here. Structured parking is great. It's the best balance in a creating an urban environment that's traditionally kind of suburban, or the customer base is mostly suburban. It does have its limits. You're talking about $25,000 to $30,000 per space to deliver an off-street structured parking stall. And so you see is that they can't do it all. And so these are surface lots. It's kind of a thin Texas donut in these out parcels here with the multifamily. Here it is, PV. I promised it. Let's talk about PV. So here's kind of the PV from before. Really, the only difference here at PV is that we don't have light rail in the mix here yet. There's kind of a long-range plan to eventually bring it there. That's an unfunded extension, so we'll see. It's a very, very long-term idea. But we're still using the same strategy. We approached Red. Red went out on the property acquisitions and kind of extinguished those kind of shared rights that the former department stores had on the property. They did 3 acquisitions on the site, and then you kind of get the idea of what they were able to put together. They got, I think it was 1, 2, 3 boxes. No deal with pennies yet. I say yet. I don't know, but my prediction is that I think there's probably a deal to be had here in the future. Costco's kind of on its own, and you kind of get a look and feel for what they're doing here with the kind of form-based zoning. That's kind of those ideals that are part of the PUD zoning. This is kind of a site plan for what they're building out here.
Could you swing back this one more?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
And then you can go ahead.
Jeff, can I share the slideshow with all the attendees?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You guys put your phones away. Sorry. You're gonna save those. Just
So
make
what-
sure like the signs in out there.
What are they doing here? What do you see in the design and the site plan? I talk about the super block. No more super block. Super block bad. We're getting the roadway network through here with public access, and so we are supporting that by reimbursing future sales tax dollars that are generated on site. Right now, they're only at 400 units down here with street lights. We do anticipate that there's going to be more of these pads. We'll have more multifamily in the future. And Red, they've been great to work with at so many sites, including the 2 downtown that I noted, and they're bringing an incredible tenant mix onto this site. They just announced more yesterday. It anchored by Lifetime and Whole Foods, and Whole Foods I think should be open I think by the end of the year or Q1 of next year. They've got Fender headquarters to relocate here. A lot of notable local brands.
Fender.
The guitar.
Really?
Yeah. I think Fender is either here or here.
Good gosh.
So they're really knocking it out of the park with on the announcements, and this is probably about a 15-year timeline to be able to build all of it out, and hopefully I don't know, maybe they want to continue on. I don't know. I'm not going to but I think if they did make a deal, I think you can kind of see what happens if this keeps moving westward. So the ones I haven't talked about, Christown. So we don't have a development agreement with Christown. The mechanics are a little bit different at Christown. Christown is largely leased out to all the individual stores. And so it makes the kind of master planning very challenging. They have great users on site. They have the Target and Walmart. This was a plan they put together about 5 years ago for how they wanted to kind of start, dip their toe into the redevelopment. And it's very challenging. If you, as the mall, owner, you don't want to let go of that near-term income. How do you, fund the rest of your pro forma if you're going to, take so much real estate off the table and close it for redevelopment? they had an idea here of bringing in a 17th Avenue across the site. Great idea. You kind of see that look and feel through some of the other mall redevelopment sites I talked about. They did do a lease for the old Costco to American Home Furnishings. So that kind of made this plan for now impossible. They do want to be able to bring something like this to the site. They are going to bring residential. Down here they did a zoning case to allow for residential on this pad at the southeast corner here at 15th Avenue in Montebello. I understand that is going to start here in the next probably 24 months. So that's kind of, they're just going at it a little more slowly, but it's the same thing in the strategy we talked about, bring more residential on site. That in the long run, that's what works. And we have this, this is in a TOD zoning district, so they can tap into using all those tools to allow for more height and density as well. And obviously we have light rail adjacent to the site too. So we're always open to working with Kimco, and we support their kind of long-term view for being able to bring more residential onto the site. Desert Sky. So this one's a little bit different than the others. Most of the malls, the anchor location doesn't work, and then they tear it down. Here, the 4 of the anchors are active, and so some of them obviously aren't the same ones that have been there before, but they've been able to really reposition this property to kind of meet the market and the current demand. They have Curacao at the north end of the mall. Another of the boxes has been turned into this kind of market with multiple users. And so really when we talk to them, they're very happy as is and don't really foresee any type of near midterm opportunity for some type of redevelopment. Now, we are bringing light rail there eventually anyways. So in the 30s, we will have light rail coming up 79th Avenue on the west side of the site. And, if they want to be able to bring residential on site, we are going to support that. There is a very significantly sized development that's just south of the mall being developed by Dominium. They are doing senior housing with multifamily kind of on 2 sides of their site, and I believe I think it's more than 500 units overall. It's a pretty big size development. So, and that was a kind of parcel outside the ring road that they acquired to develop that residential product. So, the multifamily is kind of encroaching on the site naturally. And as we bring light rail to the site, we expect that to ramp up, and maybe there will be some opportunity in the future where it makes sense for us to work with them on consolidating parking rights, collapsing parking rights into one area of the site, and then redeveloping more of the parking field into residential as well.
Who are the anchors in this right now?
The anchors, it's Dillard's. Clearance, it's the Plaza de la Culturas kind of market, Burlington, and Curacao. Those are the 4 anchor properties. Sears is the vacant one at the southeast end of the property.
What is Curacao?
Curacao is I'm trying to find the right way to describe it. It's like an electronics big box store that's focused to kind of the Latino market, and they operate in a couple different states in the Southwest. I think they also operate in Mexico too.
Sounds like a movie.
And so that's kind of the overview of mall redevelopment, our efforts at these sites, and what the future holds. And more than happy to answer any other questions you have.
Good question. Is the light rail, is it working for what the goals that the city set for you guys? I guess what I'm asking is, it's the area directly around the light rail, at least my clientele is like, I don't want to be next to light rail. It seems a little like rough, and I personally don't would ride the light rail, but I'm just wondering. I guess who is this target demographic?
I think it's a great question. So we're going to say yes, we think the light rail has been a success and has worked for the city's development goals. And when I talk to a really wide spectrum of the development community, where we want to get them interested in areas along light rail, and sometimes it's I don't like it or I don't want to be near it, and other times it's we operate in other major metropolitan areas in the United States that have transit systems. We know what we're buying into, totally get it. That's where we want to be, and that's where we see the growth opportunity. So it just really depends on who you're talking to, and when you look at the valley in whole, we know that we're not the only offering. There's other cities that are working on their downtown development too, and their urban redevelopment as well, I guess as best as that's kind of supported by their constituency. And they have a different approach, and for many of them it doesn't involve transit or high capacity transit. That's their choice, that's fine. And the further you are from a kind of core metropolitan central city, it just makes it more challenging to make that service work. But it just really depends on who you're talking to. And so public transit, it's a public system, you're always going to have some type of, challenge with it. And the developers who understand that and see the upside that comes with it, that's who we are able to better work with. And some of these projects, Central Station's, $320 million, capital investment, these are real financial institutions backing them with the construction loan. Everyone doesn't want to subject themselves to a lot of risk, and they understand it and are willing to invest.
But return on investment with the light rail, return on investment on the light rail, does it pay off to to build it, to maintain all this?
So the capital investment in the system itself is at about $2 billion. For the region, and I noted that our CapEx value for all the projects is $11 billion for the city of Phoenix. That's just Phoenix. That doesn't include Tempe and Mesa. Tempe's probably about another 5 or 6, and then Mesa's about 250 million or somewhere around there. So you're talking about kind of a 6 to 1 or so on the capital value to build the project, and then the economic development from the real estate development that's happened since then. And we're very fair on how we calculate that. Is light rail under construction? We're not counting stuff that's far afield from light rail, or projects that had been completed before it was constructed. So we're not trying to cherry pick stuff that where a developer decided, I'm going to build here, and light rail is not even, consideration or something that's kind of part of the mix. So we do think that we get a good return on the investment.
What are the plans around the 303 freeway?
So if you kind of look at the map of the region, Phoenix, we only have the north end of the 303 is within the city of Phoenix. And so our plan up there is can be described in 4 letters: TSMC. That is in the city of Phoenix, and if you've been here for a long time and particularly grew up in the East Valley and saw the impact on the city of Chandler when the Intel plant opened, that is essentially what we expect to see repeated with TSMC opening up in North Phoenix.
What is TMC?
Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company.
Okay. Is it Taiwanese again, or it's?
It is a Taiwanese company
Yes.
that's expanding its presence in the United States.
The one on 303 and I-70?
Yep, that big building out there with all the cranes
But there is no.
sucking up all the trade labor in the valley on the project.
They were talking about the second location within Metro Phoenix. Where is the
Um,
second location?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is another fabrication plant that would be built on the same site. So
Okay.
there's one fab that's opening next year,
Yes.
and then there's a second fab that they're going to get to work on that would open in like 28 or 29. So
Okay.
they're going to do more investment at that
Because they
position.
were talking Chandler also, they were considering Chandler for the same project for the second location.
That I'm not familiar with. I know Intel's done its own expansion at its site off of Ocotillo
Bless you.
on South Chandler, but that's what TSMC is bringing to the table at the, and TSMC, don't forget, just talk about them, right? We see the big plant. There's tons of suppliers that come with them too, and that's what has that multiplier effect in the economy. You guys know this very well. It's you're relocating here with a high wage job, and I need to buy a home. So this keeps that customer throughput, keeps that pipeline nice and full.
So the plans for Metro to then extend north?
It's sort of like the light rail.
Yeah.
No, so the light rail, I don't have the future system map up here, but we have one long-term plan to bring a line to PV Reimagine, so the new, I don't like to use the word mall anymore, because it's not a mall, we got moved on. But that's a one long-range extension. There may be another one that leads west toward Glendale. Glendale's not funding the light rail. They're not a stakeholder in it. Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa are the three stakeholders. So there might be another one that heads west down. That could be Thomas Indian School. We don't know which one at this point. Our current local tax for just the city of Phoenix to fund high capacity transit, it runs through 2050. So the near term focus is I-10 West. That is where funding from the plan is going to be targeted. And then depending on recessions or expansions or the performance of the tax, what do we have left over to be able to build some of those remaining extensions? We don't know at this time.
So is the light rail following the development or is promoting the development of the city?
Light rail promotes development of the city, promotes redevelopment in areas that had already been developed.
So when it's built around the community, the prices raises?
So typically we do see that the land value around the rail does increase higher than areas without rail. Now, I think it could be an argument that a lot of that is just really downtown and midtown influence. It's not a dramatically different increase, but when you average out all property in Maricopa County versus the kind of 20 square miles along light rail, there is a difference where over time the property value along rail does increase. And that's also, rail kind of goes along with being centrally located too. There is definitely value in having a central location, and so that's, I think, another kind of co-variable that influences that outcome.
And for the TSMC, do you have any information on the range of wages that the jobs will be providing?
I don't have that immediately off the top of my head. I know that they are largely six-figure wages that are being offered at the plant, but we certainly, if you'd like, we do have people on the team speak more specifically about that project, and we can get that information. But between them and the suppliers, you're looking at a lot of high-wage jobs that are coming in as a result.
How about the impact on the residential development around the plant? Is Phoenix expanding west, north, or there will be more demand?
Yeah, there will be a lot more
Blue
demand.
River,
There will be a lot more demand for
any plans? Any?
Yeah, so we do have a land use plan. We have a general plan that does accommodate for additional residential development up in North Phoenix. If you look at our municipal boundary, it does cover a lot of area that is west of I-17 and north of the plant. That kind of goes around the Ben Avery range and then keeps pushing northward toward. Because if you go up to Anthem, the west side of I-17 is actually in the city of Phoenix.
Yes.
We kind of annexed all the way up there to get that nice sales tax from the outlet mall. And we have, the city of Phoenix is on the west side of I-17. So there is a lot more land in our control to be able to zone to support more housing in that area. And that's not even to say nothing of the area along North Valley Parkway and Tremonto, where there's still a lot of property in those areas that are very attractive for home builders to build.
Any website to see the plans for the 10-year development, near 10-year development?
For the general plan, yeah, we do have maps for that, and we can certainly share that with the group. The development, it's really on what does the home builder developer kind of anticipate of what they want to build to meet the market demand. We really provide the overall vision of this is the type of land use and zoning that we would support these areas.
But if I go to investinphoenix.com, will I see all these plans, or I should go elsewhere?
On the land use plan you're talking about, that's going to be through the Planning and Development Department's website. But you can email me and I will send you the information. Yeah, and have my contact information here.
Thank you. Yes.
Any malls we missed? No.
But last question about
Funny you mention that. So Biltmore, we don't have a development agreement there, and they've been a very well performing property. They do get a lot of competition from Scottsdale Fashion Square for tenants, and even they're looking at our kind of strategy. They're like, what do we need to do? We need to bring residential on site. That's the answer. That's how you make this work in the long term, is you need to keep bringing residential back on site. And so they have a plan to do that as well, I think on the east side of the property. We're open to working with any mall owner or mall developer to try and get them to buy into our vision. What I would say is that Fashion Square, or I'm sorry, not Fashion Square, Biltmore, we don't have a, I don't know what their land use designation is. I imagine they probably have a PUD, and I think they did amend that PUD to allow for residential and other uses on the site. So they come in and ask for that. That's something that we are going to support.
I don't have a specific question, but do you have any insight on how this intertwines with the new ADU ordinance in Phoenix?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the ADU, it's kind of I think from the TOD perspective, it's great that that was adopted by the council for the being allow the accessory dwelling unit by right. As we want to be able to meet the housing need, and we can't really do all of it through just the limited area along our light rail corridor that the surrounding neighborhood supports. We can get developed 200, 300 unit multifamily complexes, but we have our limits on how much space and sites we have, and really the point is the ADU. It just unlocks a lot more potential to be able to provide for more units. Now, that's really in the eye of the homeowner on what they want to be able to do with that space, but it is a way to create more inventory that's not all solely reliant on Alliance or Street Lights or some other big multifamily developer building it.
Do you have any details on or information on some of the details, like can HOA restrict you from doing it, and is it official yet? Like, can people actually start implementing it now?
In the city of Phoenix, the ordinance is in effect. It was passed last year, and That was done by Ryan. I'm trying to remember if it was. It's in the TOD areas. We don't have hardly any HOAs in the TOD areas because they were all largely developed and built out kind of pre-1970 or so. So there's not really any HOAs in those areas. So you don't have that obstacle. I believe that the HOA can restrict it, but I don't know. I can look up the answer on that. A little unfamiliar on that because most of the areas I deal with just don't, are like, yes, all right, I don't have to worry about that. It's awesome. So not saying it's bad, but
What is that you guys are doing on City North, next to Desert Ridge?
So City North is in the city of Phoenix. It's west of Scottsdale, so it's in the city of Phoenix. We don't have a lot of involvement in that property as far as trying to incentivize it. So they're kind of just doing what they need to do it, to respond to market demand, and they're developing accordingly. So
It's private.
yeah, it is private. We did do an incentive deal there a long time ago that was subject to some public scrutiny that we received a negative court ruling on that caused the city to kind of sharpen its focus to make sure that we are making sure that there's a documented and quantifiable public benefit to the city when we do development agreements with private developers. So our involvement in City North is from a long, long time ago. And we're not really steering the ship there with the developer on what they're trying to do.
Probably less. I talk too much, but there are so many vacant plazas all around the city, which really were ghosted. No one occupies, no one wants to rent. They are pretty run down. Any plans to take care of these? This is my number one. Somehow to give a boost to these vacant, empty spaces with old stores and rundown. Also, second, any plans for the homeless? There are great apartment buildings like 52nd Street and 202. Great areas by the zoo, 1 mile to the zoo, to the botanical garden. And there are really camps of homeless people living around. Any plans to accommodate these people elsewhere? Moving from downtown Phoenix.
So on the retail center, what I would say is that we will offer zoning if it meets the general plan to be able to change the zoning at some of the retail centers if it makes sense. And that kind of goes back to the data point on, the U.S. is overstored on square footage for retail, and this is kind of the outgrowth of that. And so we know that more of these retail centers that are vacant need to be repositioned for another use. So if they come to the city asking for a different zoning designation, we're going to be very open to listing them on allowing for a different use.
But this is up to the owners. It's not like
yeah, and so this gets back to the other point on eminent domain. We're not gonna, we have to be careful on. We need to respect the private property owner and their rights on what they wish to do with the property. And what we do is we try and create supportive plans that encourage or incentivize. We have a lot of people in our city that we need to keep happy. And we have some who don't want us to getting very aggressive with our hands on their property, so we have to have a very light touch.
But I mean proactive, not aggressive, because they are elderly owners. They don't know, they don't have the energy to do anything, but these stores stay there.
Yeah, I think that what we, in some of those situations, like with the mall redevelopment, we're talking with buyers who have development experience or development contacts or partnerships who can buy some of those centers and then have kind of the know-how and capital access to be able to position them for redevelopment. So that's typically how we respond in those situations. And the homeless, I'm certainly not the subject matter expert on that on that topic. We have a very robust plan for what we're trying to do to address homelessness, region-wide. We, as the city of Phoenix, we do a lot. We have most of the population in the city of Phoenix. We also have most of the social service providers. Phoenix Rescue Mission for the water drive, they're in Phoenix. CAS is in Phoenix. We do a lot of lifting on that issue, and we have a lot of plans to be able to create for more beds and more housing. We're talking about TUD being able to create more housing units. I know that homelessness is related a little bit downstream, but we want the best way to stop homelessness is to prevent someone from becoming homeless in the first place, and we can create more housing supply. That's just one angle where we're able to create more supply so that there's just more housing opportunity available for people.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's how we
I think we've reached it, and if you have a great question you didn't remember, there it is. Please reach out to me and contact me. More than happy to answer.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.